such a terrific ending to another great entry. You guys are just really making my final week here with all of these great entries. Just so nice. It's so awesome to say I'll see you next time for another great entry, and then here it is. It's just really awesome. Let's jump back a page. We are going to start off right here at E, and I really love the way that you push the horns here. I guess you push everybody. I would push the winds too, but we've got this held sounding B here, and then it fades out into the clarinets, right? Yeah. I mean, you can sort of hear in the mock-up that the dynamics are not quite totally even. But when you think about it, before, they were already kind of blasting around here at fortissimo, right? And it's maintained for quite a while. There's like a little breath at the beginning of each bar, so it's not a total grind for them. But still, just the push right in here from both of those groups and so on. It's really, really great. So your clarinets are basically are fading into clarinet and bassoon are fading into the same pitches as the horns right in here. And I almost wonder whether or not you could have kept the horns going for just a little bit further past everybody else's fade out, if you know what I mean. But it's great that you stopped. You basically just let go with all the rest of the brass, right? And then just had certain pitches keep going forwards. So naturally, the weight of the horns will do the work. So you don't have to continue the horns for longer because of that particular strategy. But and also to a degree the weight of the clarinet, first clarinet and first bassoon will also do some of the work. But still, just yeah. And it's also good that you put the fermata right there on that first chord, exactly where it belongs, rather than on the rest that follows it, as I've seen in a few evaluations. It's more accurate the way that Barvinsky scored it, and then gives the conductor the impetus to, or the permission to make it as long as it needs to be, according to the hall and his perceptions of the music and everything else, the way his players are playing and so on. It's all a shaping game. Now, it's also kind of neat the way that you drop out the bassoon as these notes rise, so you kind of get out of the way, so that this doesn't connect with a held B, but then you let this one continue on for a little bit. All right, so those are all really nice touches. Now, harp is doubling your double basses, and this is kind of cool. You're throwing in a natural harmonic on the octave right at the start of the cellos, dovetailing into the cellos and so on. All really, really cool ideas. You could almost mark the harp like forte here, right? For just to give it a chance to kind of double at the same level as the double basses. But yeah, leave it mezzo forte. The harpist will just play out. But yeah, in your mock-up, you could have it a little louder to more accurately reflect what will happen. So here you have this big, huge push, portamento here. Bum. It's such a cool idea, and you hang on the same B with the violas, and then the violas become the lower voice. That is so cool. Now the pressure of the cellos pushing up with this portamento really creates a nice a nice strong melody line in here. So it isn't too out of balance in the upper harmonization, but I would still watch out about marking it forte espressivo. Right, forte espressivo is for your it's for your melody. Right, these parts are subsidiary. They have to you have to be really careful, because if you have if you were to give this, say, to maybe like a conductor that doesn't have as much experience, or players who are a little bit rambunctious or whatever, you may end up having far more force from above than you intend, right? So I would just say pianissimo crescendo to mezzo forte, and just really keep it 1 degree back from the cellos. But this is all really cool in here. These harmonizing pitches with the octave melody, just a little touch of double bass in there. I think is absolutely perfect. Firms up the line really wonderfully. This is nice too. The slur, da da da. It's nice, as opposed to just putting in long bows on tenuto all the time. Yeah, and then more of the same. Pretty much arranged the same way with just a little bit more. Like here, you have tenuto against slurs. I would try to have it with the same kind of phrasing, same kind of articulation, right? And then here you hold off on your winds. Good idea, but also hold off a little bit on the strings, like I said. Yeah, and then winds fading out into the harmony of the strings. Then da da da, long, long, long. All right, zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah, this will all stay consistent, but just don't have forte all the way through here on those strings. Da, and then here, this is perfect. Da 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 da. Right, going up to the F sharp here. There's, as you probably saw in the evaluation criteria, there's an implied leap here, right? And not just da 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 dum, but da 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 dum. And I think that will, that the approach that you've taken here will cover it. I think here you can go a little stronger on your oboes, okay, and your clarinets. In fact, I would try to have some sort of destination dynamic here. Like I'd rather you put the forte here, right, with these players, like so they're pushing into it, but maybe not too much on the winds. Yeah, this is cool. Bassoon, horn, cellos teaming up there. And then here you go to just a purely woodwind texture, and that's also great. Oboe on top. Then you've got your clarinets sort of conspiring in the middle here on these harmonies, and then almost like a direct transcription of the left-hand part for the bassoons. Really nicely done. Simple, direct, works fantastically well. All right, and that just leaves us with the viola solo. Da, 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 and just and here you are marking your non-divisi with a bracket. You can just say non-div, right? It's perfectly fine. Sometimes, especially with the thinness of the line that you've got here in the bracket, the player can miss it. But most players would actually probably just play this as open G fifths, right? Rather than going to divisi here, I think. I mean, it is kind of delicate, but and really lovely harp scoring right in here. Nice big roll and everything. And then coming back to solo viola. Usually the viola part would be the top staff rather than the bottom staff, right? And then con gli altri. So exactly the right way to score that. Now, this is interesting. You scored the same exact 2 notes played on the exact 2 same lower strings, but an octave apart, of course, because of the octave tuning between viola and cello. Here you're marking it as you're writing it as a double stop, which it is perfectly capable of being, right? So it's a D with an open G above it. And here you have a D with a G above it, and you write divisi, right? So why can't this be, I mean, it's the same exact thing. The same technique could be used. You could have, this could also be non-divisi. And you just get a nice, richer sound in there. Yeah, to a degree, right? It's not a huge factor. But yeah, let vibrate, that would be like over here, right? Like letting every single note, like, because look, that is actually just happening anyways in your harp part. The harp part, I mean, the harp is an LV instrument, right? The player might like damp right here. I would say if you really want this to last into the next bar, you could just write LV at the end of the bar or at the beginning of the next bar, right? But all of this will, what you're scoring here is what's going to happen in the harp. They're not going to stop to damp the strings here, and they won't do it here either. Like they're not going to be damping every string as they go up. So it's just completely unnecessary. You didn't need to write that. All right, and then this big beautiful roll here, celesta on the same exact notes, remembering that celesta is a transposing instrument for anybody watching out there who doesn't know, and a little glockenspiel ding at the top. Yeah, and just really, beautiful connected scoring down here. Really is a lovely ending, and I think it fits the piece really, really well. But just to really it's in the context of the other things that you scored, which is also really great. You really have kind of captured a certain mood, a certain side of Barvinsky, which I think is it's very thoughtful and it's nuanced, and you're really focusing on color and on the meaning of the emotion in the arc of the lines and so on. This is just really nice scoring. Now let's jump back to D, where you got some very imaginative scoring, some of which I think works a bit at cross purposes, and it's just like a question of like what is possible, right? So the problem here is that the node at the major third is just really, really soft on violins and violas. On cellos, it's a little stronger, but I was just testing it out on my mandolin just now, and it's just really hard to kind of really nail that exact spot and then get it to speak and so on. And I can remember experimenting with different nodes and so on, and this just really is a soft one, like on a bowed instrument, or on a bowed higher string instrument like a viola it's a little better on viola, but not so great on violin. I still wouldn't score it. I just think that you're better off trying to get that just write it in, right? Just like write in the actual fingered pitch rather than the harmonic node. Okay, just finger that right in there, and then here you have the same thing on the double bass, and that's all cool. It's just like, who is going to hear it when you have so much weight in the middle of the measure coming from the timpani and like the tuba right here pushing into this, right? So that there's and the contrabassoon, right? So you just have this. Well, that's while you are reaching up for this. So this is also getting buried too. So I think you have you're kind of going at cross purposes. Like you have two different things happening here, two different ideals of sound. And it's not helping to have even more weight on that F sharp coming from the horns as well, like right where this pitch would be, right? So this pitch would be sounding F sharp below middle C in concert pitch, right? And then that, which is the same exact note as the horn. So it's just going to get swallowed up by the horn anyway. So yes, just maybe there's some experiments in here that aren't working too well unless everybody were just as light as tissue paper above the strings or around the strings. Like if there was nothing here but strings, then this would be a really intriguing texture. So it's a worthy experiment, but I don't feel that it is going to work. But it's really easy to fix. Just maybe change around what you're doing here with the viola. throw in written pitches here. I wouldn't jump down 2 octaves between these two just to get the F sharp down here. And there's also like the whole question of like how effective is it to have, going back in between tremolo notes that are repeated in other tremolo parts and so on, and like what part, to what extent does it really just sound like one tremolo pitch is just being held or just traded off between instruments, so that it just sounds like this part right in here might just sound like octave F sharp tremolos with just a slight break right in here before the second comes in there, right? Because the tremolo, like, unless you really want each of these tremolo pitches to like articulate, right? Then like it just really sounds like some shivering around with occasional dropout and so on. It doesn't really have the sense of the motion of the octave going back and forth. That's like the other problem right in there. I mean, it is such a cool idea. Like I say, I hate to say, oh, Luca, it's like it's not going to work at all, but actually, like in practical purposes, like it might work. You might say, well, you might put like a little accent or tenuto or some other kind of thing on the beginning of each of these tremolos to sort of like to show that they're being articulated. All right, so that could be one thing. But still, just the whole effect with all of this other weight, pianissimo or piano or not, it just it's wiping out what you're doing here in the double basses, and the trumpets or the trumpet and trombones are also wiping out what's going on with this beautiful calculation here of all the very, very delicate, hard to finesse artificial harmonics, or not artificial, natural harmonics, but in weird positions. But I mean, I like the effect. Like, I mean, the mock-up sound was really cool. The little roll here, the really low F sharp being shared by tuba and contrabassoon softly. Right, and the kind of the shifting double bass part right in here, filling in the octave above, and I mean, there's some cool stuff to this. The bassoons as well, working together, which is we're also they're also going to grab this, and this isn't going to end up adding all that much support either. So if you have both your both your third horn here and your second bassoon kind of sitting on that F sharp, then yeah. This is a place where you might have given these octaves, like instead of to first and third, you might have given them to like third and fourth, right? I would actually say, yeah, third and fourth or first and second. It's better to have them playing having seat partners who are used to listening to each other's octaves. It's better to have them working together rather than your two resident hotshots, the leader of the section and the guy that kind of helps out the first in playing some high stuff, but is possibly like they have their own, they have their relationship with the fourth player, and they possibly want to move up to first, or they want to audition for another orchestra or something, right? So it's really better to share between the seat partners rather than like the first and the third most often. I mean, Ravel does a lot of first and third stuff, and I that might have been the way that he saw things and custom and so on, but I think it's in the long run, to do that all the time is less effective than to have seat partners sharing intervals like that, because they have a real idea of what's a clear intonation for each other, and they just really they just really can nail each other's approach to intonation, or let's put it this way, the fourth really listens to the third, the second really listens to the first. Like, that's the most intimate relationship. All right, so but like if you just say, okay, well, all right, Thomas, let's say that I do what you ask, and I throw in, I write these out at the pitch that I intend them to be, and and I sort of correct everything. I get rid of these harmonics. I write this as I should write this out as a written note rather than or a fingered note rather than as a harmonic and so on. Let's say that you do all that, right? So what is the chances of this working? I would say that like it will work pretty well, but it'll be really hard to hear the strings all the same because of just like the resonance of the, you have your trumpets amped up so much. Do they even need to be mezzo forte espressivo? See, like you're coming off of this really loud part, right? So what if the trumpets come in mezzo forte and they diminuendo, trumpet and trombones come in mezzo forte and they diminuendo to like piano, right? So what if your brass just played this whole part piano and then crescendo, right? Towards forte, toward by the end of the page. Because like they're loud enough. Yeah, everybody can hear them, and then you get this beautiful stately controlled sound that doesn't interfere too much with all of these other calculations that you have going on. Da 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 da, all these other things. Yeah. See, I would say that's the solution. Bring down the volume of or the dynamic, not volume, but the dynamic of your heavy brass here, and just let them play piano espressivo, right? And that makes a better blend with everything else, and then everything will work out except these like harmonics, these natural harmonics are still not going to really come through. So glockenspiel, just tell us how long you want this note to last. Do you want it to last like until here or until there, right? And then just write out that value. It's when I see a score that is just full of, the LV tie. That's just so unnecessary. Just write out the full bar, right? If it's the full bar, write out the full bar. If it's 2 beats, write out 2 beats. Just write what you want there, right? Like how long you intend it to last. Yeah. Is this the full bar? Then just write out a full bar of glockenspiel. That's fine. The decay for that glockenspiel is going to be, fairly fast. It won't last longer than a bar or perhaps like 3 beats. So I think you're just safe in just tying this to the to pitches, right? And then just going to the next one. It's just too much. It's too much LV. Just save this tie for like when you really want it to, I just think that like just a regular row of notes it's completely unnecessary. All right. So other than all those caveats and all that nitpicking, it's actually pretty nice. It's just really, and then like if you were to just hold off on the magnitude here and then push into this, I think this comes through really, really nicely and really sets up this, what I'm calling these Ravel chords, right? Bum, 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 da, 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 da. Just really nice, thick, beautiful texture. I love the way that you are, keeping your first violins in octaves. You have your second violins like playing G octaves and so on. And that's all good. I've been nitpicking a little bit about strings being playing too much harmony against massive textures like this. But I still think I think that this will work, right? And then here you got the B doubling the second violins and so on. Right. Same pitch here. So it's nice and strong. I mean, yeah. I mean, you might as well not even have had this Divisi octaves for your first violins when you've got that same octave being played. Yeah. Exactly. Like so you've got the same thing happening in violas and cello. So like why even divide up your first violins? Just put all the power on the top. Yeah, and this is fine too. Slurring across this little rest. It's like a Yeah, it's like a mezzo staccato, the way that you got it. Now, if you want it to really bite, though, then get rid of the slur. Da ta ta. Right, as opposed to da. This is like this is what this suggests. It's just a little, just a kind of a little oomphy kind of staccato, rather than like a real direct one. Yeah, and then here we got just more and more of these harmonics, these natural harmonics. And look, they're really, Luca, they're really not very loud. And this is right where you need the power the most, because you're not doubling your Divisi cellos and double basses with any of these people, right? They're just sitting on their heels. You got a little bit of weight down here from tuba. You've got contrabassoon going back and forth, bump, 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 right? But you don't have anybody really doubling this function with any weight, right? It's just like, really, there's not a lot of weight in here. I mean, like, could the trombones and the bass trombones being double some of, or trading off through some of these lines here in the cellos and just add a little bit more weight? It would be kind of nice, because, really, it just feels like this gets lost, right? There's really, it was weak enough already back here. But now it has to fight against these huge stack of fortissimo and forte and the brass kind of stuff happening, forte and the horns. So it really doesn't have a lot of, it just needs more weight, is what I'm saying. But that's not to say that this isn't really beautiful and grand and wonderful. I think that is clear. Like here, you've got this stack of B octaves and so on. You could have actually had your first violins doubling the flutes up there, right? Because like this B, the line of this lower octave is already covered by your middle strings. All right. So to get to the juicy part. Da 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 da. Yeah, and you have a huge amount of weight on the idea. You have just, you have very little. You just have like first and second trumpet here, and there are actually three pitches at play, aren't there? Sorry, my alternate screen is going dead. Yeah, see, so like. Yeah, I'm like the repeating notes. They start off with just intervals of thirds and fourths and so on at first, but then by around the fifth bar, they turn into chords, right? But here you decided that the trumpet should start playing part of the melody, and I don't blame you, because you really need a lot of force there. But some of that's also being covered by your horns as well, right? So, yeah, maybe you could get that extra pitch with somebody. Doesn't have to all be, it doesn't have to all be melodic and harmonic right in here. It could also be rhythmic. Yeah, it's. I just kind of feel it's a little weak at the very top, at just that top line of flute. It's actually kind of hard to hear in the mock-up too, because like it's sort of being absorbed by all of this flailing around here. I think you could add another octave here, because you've already got this. You got this range here covered by the seconds, so you could just have your first violins jump up, or just, if they were already playing octaves like I suggested, just have them play the top line from that point on, and then have them double your first flute here, and then I think you just get a lot more power out of it, and a lot, I think the melody would, and don't worry about sending your first violins all the way up to C#7, right? They can handle that. That's why they make the big bucks. Just being really, really clear that tenutos mean long bows, right? You know, long, 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 zoom, zoom, zoom. So you might want like a staccato or some kind of articulation mark here. So it's papa, right? Long, long, ta ta. You know, as opposed to just long, long, ta ta. It just like there's like almost no there's no articulation style here that really just makes it a tight, punchy note. Yeah. And as far as articulation is concerned, could these possibly be staccatos? You would only really have to mark the first two bars, and then the players will just assume it's staccato from there on in, or you could just mark them all staccato to help your mock-up if you wanted to. And same thing here with these parts right in here. Now, one thing that I'm kind of curious about is like, why aren't you letting your first trumpet player rest their lip? Right, and here, like you're saying, okay, all right, okay, third player, and I want you to come in and play, and then we'll let you rest your lip. The third player is less important of a part than the first, right? Because the first has got this little duo right here, or unison, I should say, with the first horn, right, and with the cellos and the violas, inharmonically speaking. So why shouldn't this be 2 and 3 all the way through, right? So just have 2 and 3 play those repeated intervals, and just stick with it, and then just give your first player a rest. Like they just really need to kind of rest their embouchure, especially if they're just going to really dig into this blast, hit that, go. Actually, they're not really going all that high, but they might feel the urge to just really play out and play loud. Yeah. Right, and then it's just pretty much more of the same, and then this big push in here, which I already talked about. So yeah, so really cool D section. I know I'm picking it apart and like pointing out possible areas that you need to work on, but it doesn't mean that it isn't terrifically exciting. And you just really did a great job here in this D section. It's one of the most exciting, I think, that that anybody has submitted in a mock-up, right? So and the scoring too is just really, really fiery, and yeah, really focused. If there was only if there's one possible thing I could suggest, and that is, like, how long can the same exact approach be maintained, right? So here you go on for 11 bars. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. Yeah, so 11 bars with pretty much the same scoring, right? Is there any kind of, like, so you have so many winds all kind of doing the same task. You have a very secure, comfortable arrangement with the melody and so on and so forth, and like this harmony right in here. Could any position shift? Could anything mutate? Could anything progress or slowly evolve to a different kind of sound? Or could you intensify things possibly? Like, start off with loud and strong for, forte and fortissimo in these parts, but just like make it more and more intense by the way that you shift some of the responsibilities to other players, right? Till finally it's just absolutely screaming at the end. Or could you start throwing in, things that alternate between sections? I think that was something that I did on mine. I have to go back and check. It's like I've looked at 130 other scores since I scored that. Yeah. So think about all those things, okay? Because it's just really excellent scoring in this, despite all of my pickiness. And now back to the very beginning of the piece. Section A. Yeah, so I love this no vibrato, or senza vibrato. Just a beautiful color, really. Just kind of arcane, or certainly archaic, right? Just really kind of almost feels Renaissance-y or Baroque. And, as far as the scoring is concerned, uh, you know, it's all like looking pretty good. Like flute and clarinet teamed up here in this nice upper middle register for the flute, English horn at the octave, and so on. Yeah, and the bassoons and the harmony, and then other positions here in the in yeah, it works. It all works great. And then here, this does not need to be marked down to like triple P. I think that it all works fine. But you do not need to say senza vibrato, right? Because it already doesn't have any vibrato, right? Same thing here. This should all be just one horn player handling this, and um, I would really be tempted to have it be the first player. The first player will be sitting closer to the winds than anybody else, and they will be very experienced in doing little parts where they just interact a little bit here and there with the winds, and have a real they'll really like they've got the best ear out of four people who have great ears usually. So I would just give it all to the first, and don't worry about it not being a solo. Yeah, so senza vibrato, it's there is no vibrato. Don't worry about it with horns, and don't worry about it with clarinets either. Clarinets also don't have vibrato. Now, having said this, like a clarinetist will tell you, well, I do have vibrato, but I just do it really, really slowly. I just have a very, very slow fluctuation of the timbre, so it doesn't just sound like a sine wave, right? Okay, so that's not the same thing as saying, play with vibrato, right? Like the vibrato that most people are thinking of is the quicker pulse, right? So yeah, so you don't need to mention this on a clarinet part or a brass part, especially not a horn part. Yeah, and then nat vib. All you have to do is just say to cancel out senza vibrato, just say norm, okay? Or yeah, or you can say ord or nat for naturale is fine, but you don't have to say nat vib. Just norm is fine. Yeah, and here you shift to a B flat clarinet. I mean, I'm not sure why. It doesn't really matter if you play this in an A clarinet or a B clarinet, a B flat clarinet. Sorry. Nice little roll here, finishing things up. I think that this all works fine. It's a big. It is kind of like a big sound with a discrete dynamic. Of course, as you might have heard by now, if you've been listening to my other evaluations, in this opening section, this prologue, I really am concerned a lot with timbral progression, and you do have one. You do have one in here where you change the top instrument to to first oboe and so on, and the way everything is working together. Here, I would say that the fluctuation or the nuance here is pushing into this and pulling out, and then for the accompanying instruments to have their own little nuance in the middle, right? So it's nuance against nuance, right? Da 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 da. Same da 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 da. Right, rather than having them have exactly the same push and pull. And then, do you want to just, like, what if you went, crescendo, diminuendo here, and then the answering phrase crescendo, diminuendo. And here you just went crescendo with all these parts, and then came in stronger, and then diminuendo at the end, and then gave us a pianissimo at the end here. Right? That might give us more of an arc. But just one way or another, it's beautiful, but I think there needs to be some more dynamic fluctuation. You have the color variation here, but it doesn't last for too long before you bring everybody back, right? So if there were if you change the color by having more force, that is also a kind of timbral progression. All right, now continuing on, you say leggero. Wouldn't that be Leggiero? Leggero? Leggero? Yeah. Okay. So here you're going pizzicato to bass clarinet, excuse me. So here, I think shouldn't this be staccato to match the pizzicato here? You know, so you're going pluck 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 pluck. So shouldn't it be you know? Shouldn't those two match? Yeah, and then contrabassoon, kind of supplying the illusion of like a pedaled tone, right? Yeah, and once again we've got these like tremolo on these harmonics here. So look, this isn't really going to amount to much. Like, I mean, not that mock-ups are always reliable, but you know, I mean, if you can't hear it on the mock-up, if it isn't really contributing a lot, then maybe there's something else that the double basses could be doing in there, right? Yeah, and then you know, and these right in here, I just feel it's wasted because you have other instruments that are sitting on top of those pitches that are 3 to 4 times as strong as your double basses. It's like you know, all of this atmospheric stuff that you've got in certain places only works when all of the music is atmospheric, right? Otherwise, it just really gets devoured by everybody else's stronger timbre, right? So just watch out for that kind of scoring. All right, but like this beautiful cushy effect. So in case people are wondering, how did Luca get things to sound so incredibly gorgeous right in here? Part of it is the dolce marking, and part of it is the horn pad, right, below these strings, just imbuing this gorgeous color into the strings. This is such a cool idea. You've got the viola and the firsts playing this octave melody with the second violins playing the harmony below. So just a wonderful idea. And then every once in a while you have a voice crossing, like right in here, where the violas play the F sharp that's part of the harmony here, and then the upper divisi second violins catch that note. I don't know if it really makes a whole bunch of difference there, Luca, but it is a fun idea, kind of fun interplay. And then once again, this will be a weaker staccato, you know, ta ta ta. I think you want bum ba bum. You know, you really want this well defined. But the thing is that these are both up bows, right? So it doesn't really have the same kind of oomph that you might be expecting. It's certainly not the same as this. Dun ta ta. Yeah. So this is cool. Like coming in here, flute, upper middle register, with this kind of thing. Of course, its sound is going to get kind of sucked into the first violins, but that's what you want, right? And it's the same thing is true of English horn right in here. Yeah. Right. So it's just doubling the second violins in here. Yeah, I mean, it all works great. And then you have, you know, once more, like this sort of low bass line right in here. Really, you know, quite beautiful, I feel. Just, you know, nice, somber, soft, not pushing too hard, lower heavy brass with the bassoons taking the middle voice right in here. It's all really great, and I really love how you scored out the entire flow of the left-hand part. Reinterpreted it in some places, and that's perfectly all right. And I like the whole idea of the flow being pizzicato and, you know, hopefully staccato, if you heed my advice, so that it really stands out. It's really easy for the ear to make out. This will be a little bit more difficult to the tremolo. you know. Has a slight whinnying sound to it, but that's with the way I'm singing it. But it's, it will have a little motion in here. It would have been nice if there were, if there were a stray clarinet or other player that could just double maybe a slightly softer dynamic just to kind of outline the pitch a little bit. But it's not 100% necessary. Okay, so now here we're getting into B. Bum, bum, bum. Da, 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 da. And I thought this was just really lovely, the way that you had the cellos come back in here with the pizzicato and so on, and the bass clarinet, once again, I would say staccato here. I think that when the bass clarinet gets like busy with other things, this really, I mean, yeah, you're saying diminuendo, so you kind of don't need the support anymore, but maybe you do. Couldn't this be played? Couldn't this like continue to be played by, say, like tuba, but like at triple P, right? You could get a very similar effect. It's just incredibly soft playing right in there from your tuba player, and then your bass clarinetist could keep helping out with the that idea. But yeah, but all this other stuff works really gorgeously, and giving the melody, the harmonized melody to your double reeds here, it's just a beautiful idea. Yeah, I like these like firm little footfalls here. Yeah, and I don't know if this is really making much of a difference, but whatever. It's all good. Okay. Yeah, and then here we go to this really lovely woodwind chord here. Now here, like a strong argument, like how gorgeously you have scored this, so beautifully. Why can't this all come down here to pianissimo? I know you're holding off on the pianissimo till here, right? But just a little softer, and then we could really hear those raindrops that you have, just with the way that this is all scored. And I just felt that this was one of the most gorgeous ways of approaching those wandering lines, with pizzicato in the first violins, the celesta above it, and this just really seemed like silver raindrops in here. It's so wonderful. And then just continuing on in pizzicato with the harp going along for the ride. Yeah, just terrific scoring right in here. Such a great idea. Maybe you could get even softer, like get down to triple P here with these winds. They're all in a place where they could easily play those dynamics. Really extra soft, right? It's not like it's not like you have like oboe playing a low B flat, right? All of these notes, all of these instruments could get down to just extremely soft, and then the push forward to mezzo forte would really feel like something. But however, like the harp just goes away, right? Pushing up to mezzo forte here, the harp is pretty much gone, especially on these lower strings. You could have everything, you could boost everything an octave higher and see how that works. Might come through a little bit clearer. But I like the way that it is all gone by the beginning of this bar. And you might even pull back slightly on the dynamics, just right at the end, just really clear a space so there isn't even reverb from the hall pushing into the downbeat here. Just absolutely bare, unaccompanied E right here in your first violins. And this is really nice, like trading off right in here. So yeah, beautifully scored right in here. All right, so that just leaves the C section. So so here you've got your triple octave. We're kind of back to our strings on the melody. And here is actually where I think that your harmonics actually have a shot here. But I would score them piano and not pianissimo. But yeah, right in here, crescendo to the forte, you're getting into places where the harmonics just really kind of, they just cannot compete with the weight of the heavy brass as it's growing here, the intensity of the harmony and the winds, and everything else, and the harp too. Like the harp is pretty much just going to be gone by around here. You can mark it fortissimo if you like, but it's really not going to come through. If you had a bass marimba, right, that could come through a little bit better. But yeah, and then I mean the rolled timpani is the killer of all of this down here. That's it. But it's better to have this in than to worry about this too much. So I'd say like just try to maybe at this point trade off between the two instruments, right? Rather than having this sort of built on the other kind of idea. Just have the parts trade off one to the other and kind of cover the same pitches without going to harmonics if you can. But maybe like don't go too high with the cello, and I think that you'll be all right. But yeah, we got our octave melody in here. We got English horn on the lowest voice here, and so on, and yeah, and harmony in the other parts, and so on. First clarinet covering the middle voice. Nobody on top, but the first violin. That's fine. And yeah, these other, these other solid bits of bass coinciding in different places, and I think that also is just really, really a gorgeous idea. I mean, I want this to work. Don't get me wrong, Luca, but but it just needs a little work when you get to the heavy parts, especially for the increasingly important role of the harp right in here. That just kind of goes away when you get more and more weight in the bass. But yeah, but this is all just like, and the way that you push into this, almost like a false climax, and then fade away, then come in with this right in here, and this is like where it really, really needs to work. But it's just the darn trumpets and trombones are just they're too warm, right? These are cool sprinkles, right? And the warmth of the campfire is just evaporating them before they reach the ground or the listener's ear, right? So the beautiful delicacy in here, what if the melody instruments here were like flute family and clarinets or something, or just some really delicate, or just, like I said before, just start mezzo forte, diminuendo to piano, piano espressivo, right? And then by espressivo, throw in some nuances, da 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 da. Da da, and then just right in the crescendo, da 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 da, and at this point, like, yeah, you just really have to start writing in the pitches instead of relying on major third natural harmonics. I mean, they sort of work, but I just feel, yeah, it's just really risky the way that this is all scored. But such a cool score all the way through, though. Such, that, I mean, they're ideas that could be made to work, right? But it just needs a little bit more balancing, a little bit more judicious, thoughts about like how different elements, what impact does an element really have, right? Like, these the sharps here, these F sharps here, it's the same exact thing. It's a major third node, right? But the sound of it is just going to get eaten up by these other instruments that are playing the same pitch, that are much stronger and more secure. Yeah. Anyway, that's where I will stop before I start repeating myself too much. So it just remains for me to really thank you a lot, Luca, for your participation this year. We've seen your scores before, and you are a really fine orchestrator, and this is just, this seems to me more and more progress, and just more and more getting towards professional ideal, and and just real thought, real study, real excellence in your approaches. So just really, just watch out for things that are workable is all I would say. And just, and really just have this huge hope that you're going to continue to participate, because I really need this level of scoring, from you and Craig and all the other people who are sending me full length orchestrations. I would really love to have you all back for the next 3 orchestration challenges, all the way through to the 10th anniversary. So thanks so much for helping me out on Patreon this year and helping out our friends over in Ukraine who are not doing so great now. And all my Patreon supporters, the same goes to you guys. You're really awesome, and everybody out there still watching. I sort of neglected to ask people to leave comments below, but please do. Whether I remember to say it or not, because Luca really, I'm sure that he'd really appreciate the feedback. Whatever constructive things you could say about his score that kind of move his approach forward and help him get towards perfection, and that really there is so much good in this score. Just it really is memorable and has some wonderful things that I just never even thought of, and just really beautiful subtle uses of different things, different elements. So thanks for that so much, and keep your eyes open, because there are going to be 3 more of these awesome scores tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, and all the way till we get up to Christmas, okay? So hang on, folks. I hope you're enjoying this ride, because I sure am. I'll see you really soon.